Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever in the world you are. The last 2 days have been a hive of activity, and they relate to a report by Al Jazeera promising to air a documentation of the corruption in Zimbabwe. This is the trailer to that promise document.
It's a $1 billion money laundering operation.
The gold mafia is bigger than the government.
With financial institutions, regulators, and governments complicit.
Zimbabwe is open for business.
It is the right time to strike now.
In a 4-part series, Al Jazeera's investigative unit goes undercover in southern Africa.
It's black money.
He controls 90% of this government.
Once it's refined, it's practically brand new gold.
Part 1 on Al Jazeera.
We in Zimbabwe, we cannot deny that corruption is a serious problem, because it is a serious problem. The program was supposed to be aired yesterday, but it has been cancelled. And there are stories that the Al Jazeera is being threatened with legal action, and without any doubt at all that ZANU-PF government would try to suppress the program. It is laughable. In Shona, we have got a saying that Namanyangari Putirwi, that means the truth will always come out. In Zimbabwe, corruption has become rampant, absolutely rampant. In South Africa, people are familiar with the term state capture, particularly during former President Jacob Zuma's period. And in it, there were, as the course later on established, mafia gangs who tried to buy off or have contracts with state institutions. And the state capture even went as far as capture of the presidency. It is nothing compared to what has happened in Zimbabwe. In Zimbabwe, we don't talk of state capture. The mafia have become the government institutions. They've captured everything. They have now taken over completely. And corruption have now become institutionalized. What do I mean by that? Well, I'll give you an example. In 2012, the late Edward Shindori Shininga, he was an MP, he's an ZANU-PF MP, and he was the chairman of the Mines Parliamentary Committee. And as chairperson, he had every right to visit Marange and Chiazwa diamonds. What he found there was that the mining concessions that were given to these people allowed them to carry on with their activities. There were no under legal obligation to declare the quantity of diamonds, the quality of diamonds, that they were getting. They were not under legal obligation to declare to whom they sold the diamonds and for how much. They were not under legal obligation to declare who benefited from the sales. None. So the individual and the company, if it was a company that was doing the mining, did not have to pay any company tax or individual tax. Of course, this is a looting license, a license to loot. So most of these people who have been involved there have become incredibly rich without having to pay tax at all. And so the country has benefited, the nation at large has benefited absolutely nothing from all the millions of dollars that are being mined. This documentary by Al Jazeera was going to reveal, to put the meat on the bones of the corruption in Zimbabwe. In 2019, the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe governor, Dr. John Mnangagwa, revealed that the country was losing a staggering 1.2 billion US dollars per year to gold smugglers alone. He also admitted that if that money was not lost, the country could afford to pay for its own development projects without having to borrow money from the IMF, World Bank, etc. That's how serious the issue is. 1.2 billion US dollars. That is 30% of Zimbabwe's 4 billion US dollars national budget, or 12% of Zimbabwe's US 10 billion gross domestic product. That is an unbelievable amount of money. So we cannot say corruption is not a serious problem in Zimbabwe. It is a massive problem. What is even more annoying here is that some of the wealth that is generated from all this looting ends up in the pockets of the Mafia, and they use it to bankroll their vote-rigging machinery, making it near impossible to have any meaningful, free, fair, and credible change the elections in Zimbabwe, and thus securing their hold on power. We are stuck with this regime. It is one's fervent wish that this documentary will be released and people will see corruption for what it is and begin to look at the problem of corruption with a seriousness and agency that it demands. These elections are going to be absolutely meaningless, the 2023 elections, because you're looking at the competition is just unfair. if the opposition is able to raise, for every $1 that the opposition is able to raise for their campaign, ZANU-PF can easily raise $1,000 from some of the beneficiaries of all this looting. Because these people who are involved in the looting, of course, they know that if there was regime change, they would not have the opportunity to continue the looting. So it is in their interest to make sure that ZANU-PF stays in power. And they are willing to give up some of their fabulous wealth to achieve that goal. These elections are not going to be free, fair, and credible. And on the financial point alone, this is one of the reasons why it is not going to be free, fair, and credible. As much as ZANU-PF is trying to suppress this report, I don't think they can do that. Corruption in Zimbabwe has become so rampant, and the consequences so dire that the situation cannot carry on. That, I believe, is the fundamental truth. As much as they would want to wish it, it will not happen. And in fact, what is interesting here is that most of the people in the documentary are actually rivalry gangs fighting for the control of the looting. One can look at the looting in Zimbabwe as a culture where it's a pet dish where the fungus culture that one was trying to grow has exploded and now has filled the whole petri dish, and there's nothing more for them to consume. And so they start fighting among themselves. There is no way the regime can keep the corruption in Zimbabwe under wraps. That is a fact. It is interesting that somebody produced this cartoon showing how Al Jazeera is hanging those rivalry groups, hanging them up to dry. In many ways, it is a true reflection of the reality on the ground. The ZANU-PF corruption has become so rampant that it has become more dominant than the formal sector. The Mafia have got more wealth than the Zimbabwe government, the formal Zimbabwe government. That is how serious our situation has become. And one can only hope that this report will come out and people will see it for what it is. And more noticeably, as far as I'm concerned, will realize that our present situation cannot go on. And the only way we can change it is by having free, fair, and credible elections. Without that, we'll be going round and round in circles. So with that, I'm looking forward, for one, I'm looking forward to the day Al Jazeera will finally air this 4-part documentary revealing the true nature of corruption in Zimbabwe. And so we can all see it with our own eyes and start engaging in the serious business of trying to end this culture of corruption. Thank you and good night.